The sky over Lethriel was always too clean, too perfect. Not a single dark cloud, not a single gust of wild wind. The elves liked it that way. Controlled. Quiet. Beautiful. But down in the narrow, smoke-choked alleys where the humans lived, the air was heavy and hot. Fires crackled in the forges, and the sharp clinks of hammer on steel echoed like a cry for freedom. Cale wiped the sweat from his brow with a soot-covered hand. His arms ached from hammering iron all morning, but he couldn't stop. Not because the elven guards would whip him. They rarely did that anymore. No, Cale didn't stop because he had a plan. A secret. A dream. Unlike most humans, Cale could read the old language, the one the elves tried to erase after they conquered the human kingdoms 100 years ago. He learned it from his grandfather, who whispered forgotten words while they cleaned boots for the elven nobles. Now Cale stood at the edge of the ruins of Ashwood, an ancient human city buried deep beneath the surface forge. Nobody went there anymore. The elves said it was cursed, but Cale didn't believe in curses. He believed in truth and secrets. He lit a torch and climbed down through the crumbled stone path. The air grew colder. Dust floated like tiny ghosts in the orange glow of the flame. Walls lined with broken carvings whispered stories of kings, warriors, and scholars, stories the elves had tried to wipe away. At the center of the ruin, Cale found it, a small stone chest buried beneath the ashes. He opened it slowly, half expecting nothing. But inside lay a scroll sealed with a strange red wax. As soon as his fingers touched it, the ground trembled. A quiet hum filled the air, deep and powerful, like something ancient waking up. Cale backed away, heart pounding, but the scroll pulsed with light. He grabbed it and ran. Back in the forge, Cale unrolled the scroll beneath a flickering lantern. The words glowed softly, forming symbols and maps he didn't understand yet. But one thing was clear: this was human-made. Old, powerful, forgotten. "What did you find?" a voice behind him asked. Cale spun around. It was Joran, an older human who worked beside him. Cale hesitated, then showed him the scroll. Joran's eyes widened. "Do you know what this is?" "No," Cale whispered. Joran lowered his voice. "It's not just a scroll. It's a key. A piece of the Emberstone." Cale stared down at the glowing parchment. He didn't know what the Emberstone was, but in that moment he felt it, the weight of something bigger than himself. For the first time in his life, Cale wasn't just a blacksmith's apprentice. He was something more, something dangerous. And far above, in the shining towers of Lethriel, the elves felt it too. A change in the wind. Something human. The prison beneath the elven palace was cold and silent, built from smooth white stone that never aged. It smelled like metal and magic. Cale sat in chains, his arms aching, his shirt torn at the shoulder. 2 elven guards stood near the door, watching him like he was some wild animal. He had only one thought in his mind: don't let them see fear. The glowing scroll had been taken from him the night before. He didn't know where they kept it now, but he knew he had to get it back, somehow. The door creaked open. A woman stepped in, tall and graceful, dressed in flowing silver robes. Her long golden hair glimmered under the torchlight, and her pale face showed no emotion. But her eyes, bright and cold like morning frost, were fixed on him with sharp interest. This was Princess Illyrian Valither, daughter of the Elven High King. Beautiful, feared, and trained in ancient magic. Humans called her the White Thorn because she was lovely to look at, but deadly if touched. Cale didn't stand. He met her gaze without flinching. "So," she said softly, walking around him like a hunter circling prey, "you are the one who disturbed the Emberstone's sleep." "I didn't know what it was," Cale said, his voice steady. "But you touched it," she replied, her brow arching slightly, and it responded. She stopped in front of him, close enough that he could smell the floral scent of her robes. "You're not like the others," she said. Cale gave a half smile. "I've heard that before, usually before getting kicked." To his surprise, Illyrian laughed, just once. A small sound, but real. "You have courage," she said, folding her hands. Or foolishness. Perhaps both. I had nothing to lose, Cale said, his voice lowering. Until now. Illyrian's eyes narrowed. And what have you gained? Cale looked up at her. A reason to fight. For a moment there was silence between them. Then she turned and walked to the table in the corner. The scroll was there and locked in a clear box made of magic glass. She looked at it, then back at him. You know, she said quietly, my people say you're kind or clever, but dangerous, like fire. Maybe that's true, Cale replied. But fire also brings light and warmth. Depends how you use it. Illyrian didn't answer. She stared at the scroll, thoughtful. Something flickered in her eyes, doubt maybe, or curiosity. She turned back to him. You will not be executed. The guards looked up in shock. Illyrian raised a hand. I want to learn more. About this power, and about you. Cale narrowed his eyes. I'm not a story for you to study. No, she agreed. You're a flame, and I want to know why it still burns. She left, and the door closed behind her. Cale sat alone again, but the room didn't feel quite as cold anymore. Because something had changed. She had seen him, not as a slave, but as a man. And she hadn't looked away. The moon hid behind thick clouds as Cale crouched in the shadows outside the Elven city walls. His wrists were still sore from the chains, and his ribs ached where the guards had kicked him before tossing him out. Princess Illyrian had spared his life, but not his freedom. She claimed she was letting him go to watch what he would do next. He would show her. Cale moved through the dark forest beyond the city, silent as wind through leaves. He followed a hidden trail known only to humans who still remembered the old ways. After hours of walking, he reached a cave hidden by thick vines and moss. He knocked 3 times on a flat stone. A small flap opened, and a man's eyes peered out. It's me, Cale said. Open up. The door creaked wide. Inside were half a dozen humans, men and women of all ages. Some wore patched leather armor. Others had tools instead of weapons. These were the Ashborn, rebels, wanderers, and outcasts. Cale. An older man stood up from the fire, his face lined with age and wisdom. It was Ronan, the leader of their hidden group. Cale stepped inside and unwrapped a cloth from his satchel. Inside was a small shard of red crystal, the emberstone fragment he had hidden before the guards caught him. Gasps filled the room. Is that what I think it is? Ronan asked, kneeling beside it. Cale nodded. It woke up. And it's not just a stone. It speaks, not in words but in thoughts. What did it tell you? A young woman asked, eyes wide. Cale looked around the circle of faces. It showed me images, plans, ideas, old human machines, things we've forgotten. Ways to fight, not with magic, but with our minds. The room fell silent. For years we've run. Hid, survived, Cale said. But now it's time to build. Thrice. He walked to the far wall and rolled out a rough map of the Elven city and surrounding land. We start here, he said, pointing to the main water supply pipe. We block it. Not with brute force, but with a valve they'll never expect. Something we make. A murmur of agreement spread through the room. Hope flickered in their eyes, small but growing. We don't need magic, Cale said, his voice firm. We have knowledge, hands, tools, and we have the Emberstone. If the elves want to control the world from their towers, let's remind them what it's like when the people below strike back. Ronan placed a hand on Cale's shoulder. You've become more than just a blacksmith's apprentice. Cale met his eyes. I'm not fighting for revenge. I'm fighting for a future. Outside, the wind picked up. In the distance, torches lit the forest. Elven patrols searching for him. But Cale didn't run. He lit a fire in the cave hearth and handed out pieces of metal, gears, and wire. We build tonight, he said. And the humans, once broken and scattered, began to rise from the ashes. Smoke curled into the sky above gray hollow mountains as the wind howled across the rocky peaks. The humans had made this hidden valley their stronghold. Caves had become bunkers. Tents became workshops. What once was quiet now buzzed with activity. Metal tools clanged. Whispers of strategy filled the air, and eyes burned with purpose. Kale stood on a cliff overlooking the valley. Below, men and women tested the machines they had built, small traps, smoke bombs, and tools to jam elven weapons. Everything was made from scraps, yet it all worked, and it was theirs. Suddenly, a horn blasted in the distance. Kale turned sharply. "It's them," said Ronan, hurrying to Kale's side. "The elves are coming." "How many?" "At least 200, Ronan said grimly. "Led by a royal." Kale's heart dropped. Only one royal could mean that much trouble. "Princess Illyrian," he said quietly. Down in the valley, the rebel camp was thrown into motion. Humans grabbed their gear and prepared their defenses, but they weren't ready for what came next. The elves marched like silver shadows, their armor shining, their faces calm. At the front rode Illyrian, eyes fixed forward, sword across her back, magic humming around her. She didn't look angry, she looked disappointed. The elves stopped at the edge of the valley. Illyrian stepped forward alone. "I do not wish to kill you," she called out, her voice clear. "But I will if you make me." Kale stepped into view. "You came to stop us?" he asked. "Or to see if we'd bow?" Illyrian frowned. "You've stolen elven secrets, disturbed ancient power. We must take it back." "No," Kale said. "We reclaimed what was ours." Their eyes met across the battlefield. Something flickered between them, something unspoken. Then the attack began. Elven arrows rained down like silver lightning. The humans dove for cover. Explosions of smoke burst from their traps. One by one, Kale's devices sprang to life. Nets launched into the air. Loud whistles disoriented the elven soldiers, and spiked pits opened beneath their feet. Kale raced through the chaos, helping a wounded fighter to safety. He saw Illyrian holding back, not using full force. She wasn't trying to win, she was testing him. But this wasn't a test for Kale. This was survival. Suddenly, a group of elves broke through the outer line and charged toward the command cave. Kale ran to intercept them, but before he could reach, a glowing shield dropped from the air, blocking the elves. Illyrian had cast it. Kale stared at her, stunned. "I didn't come to kill you," she said softly. "I came to see you." He stepped closer. "And what did you see?" Illyrian's voice trembled. "A man who burns with something my people forgot, hope." A pause. Then she whispered, "Come with me, Kale. Let me show you the truth inside the palace." Kale looked at his people, still fighting, still bleeding. "I can't leave them," he said. "Then I'll stay," she replied. In that moment, a bond formed stronger than any spell. And though the battle still raged around them, something new had begun. Not just rebellion, but trust. A storm rolled quietly over the hills as Kale and Princess Illyrian rode through the forest, away from the battleground. The trees whispered with every gust, and the sky above them was gray with clouds. Illyrian had traded her shining robes for a plain cloak. Her sword remained, but her crown was left behind. They were not enemies tonight. Their destination was deep in the wilds, Eldharn, the last ruins of a forgotten human city. Legends said it was swallowed by time and guarded by things that never slept. But the emberstone shard Kale carried pulsed softly, leading the way as if it remembered. The ruins rose before them by morning. Tall, broken towers wrapped in vines, stone walls carved with human runes, and gates half buried in moss. Kale felt something stir in his chest, a mix of sadness and pride. "This place is beautiful," Illyrian whispered, stepping down from her horse. Kale nodded. "It was ours, before your people took it." Inside the heart of Eldharn stood a sealed chamber, its entrance shaped like a hand. Kale pressed his palm against the stone. The emberstone glowed, and the door opened with a deep hum. Illyrian stepped inside, her eyes wide. It was a library, not of books, but of memory. Glowing walls displayed moving images like echoes from the past. Humans in robes and armor in workshops filled with strange machines. Peaceful cities full of life. Then the images darkened. Elven ships arriving, fire raining down, cities falling. They told us, Illyrian whispered, stunned. They told us you were wild, that we brought order. Kale's voice was quiet. You brought war. They stood before a glowing table that showed the truth. The elves had once been allies, students of human knowledge, but they grew jealous. When they could not master human science, they turned to magic. And when humans refused to share the Emberstone's secrets, the elves attacked. They did not win by strength, but by theft. They used the Emberstone to create immortality, Kale said. But not for everyone. Only for the elven royal bloodlines. And only by draining the life force from human ancestors. Illyrian's hand shook as she read the proof. No one told us, not even the High Council. They didn't want you to know, Kale replied. Because once you did, you'd see us differently. She turned to him, tears in her eyes. We've lived for centuries, standing on your bones. Kale didn't speak. He didn't need to. For a long moment, they stood in silence, surrounded by the truth. It was heavy, but it was real. Illyrian took a shaky breath. We have to tell them. Everyone. They won't believe us, Kale said. Not unless we show them. Illyrian looked back at the library, her face pale but determined. Then we show them, she said. Together, they stepped out into the morning light, not as a princess and a rebel, but as two souls carrying the weight of history. The storm had passed. But the war was just beginning. The night was quiet in the rebel camp, but no one slept. Kale sat by the fire, turning the Emberstone shard slowly in his hand. Its glow was soft tonight, as if resting. Sparks rose into the air from the flames, dancing up toward the dark sky. Across from him, Illyrian sat on a low stone, her cloak pulled tight around her. Her face was calm, but her eyes were full of thought. She hadn't spoken much since they returned from Eldvarn. The truth had changed her. So Kale said at last, breaking the silence, Still think we're dangerous? Illyrian gave a small smile. More than ever. Kale raised an eyebrow. But not because of rage or hate, she continued. Because of your will, your spirit. You keep going even when the world tries to crush you. He looked at her carefully. Is that what you see in me? She didn't answer right away. The wind blew gently through the camp, and somewhere far off, a child laughed. The sound was soft, distant, but hopeful. I see someone who shouldn't matter to the world, she said quietly. And yet, you do. You've become the center of something unstoppable. Kale stood and walked closer, the firelight dancing across his face. And what do you see in yourself? He asked. She looked up at him. A liar. A daughter of thieves, but also someone who wants to be more. He crouched beside her. Then stay. With us. With me. Illyrian's breath caught. You trust me, even now. I don't need to trust your name, he said. I trust your eyes. And they've changed. She touched his hand gently. And what if I'd fall, she asked. Then I'll catch you, he whispered. A quiet moment passed between them. Then, without magic or ceremony, Kale leaned in, and their lips met in a soft, uncertain kiss. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy, but it was real. When they pulled apart, Kale rested his forehead against hers. Whatever comes next, he said, we face it together. Illyrian nodded. Together. Suddenly, footsteps approached. It was Ronan, his face serious. They've declared war, he said. The Elven Emperor has called you both traitors, and they're marching this way. Thousands of them. Kale stood slowly. How long do we have? 3 days. Kale looked out into the night. The stars above were bright and clear, too peaceful for the storm that was coming. We need to prepare, he said. Illyrian stepped beside him. And when they come, I'll speak the truth. To my people. To the army. To the world. Ronan looked between them. If they don't listen? Kale's jaw tightened. Then we'll show them why they should have. The fire behind them roared as if it had heard his words. And so, under a sky full of stars and promise, love and war stood side by side. Waiting, dawn came with the sound of war drums. From the cliffs above Grey Hollow, Kale watched dust rise across the valley. The Elven army stretched far and wide, thousands of shining soldiers in silver armor, banners waving like cold fire. The sun glinted off their spears like a field of stars, but none of it made Kale feel small. He had seen the truth. He had the Emberstone, and he had people who believed. Behind him, the rebel camp was quiet. Final preparations had been made during the night. Traps were set. Weapons were ready. Kale turned to Ronan and the others. "This isn't just about freedom," he said. "This is about history, about showing them who we are." Ronan nodded, "And what we can do." In the command tent, Ellyrian tightened her armor. She no longer wore silver and silk. She wore leather like the humans. Her hair was braided back, her sword on her hip. When Kale entered, she looked up and smiled. "They'll never expect what's coming," she said. Kale held up a small device, a trigger linked to dozens of hidden machines across the mountain. Human-made, Emberstone-powered, not to destroy, but to outsmart. "No, they won't," he said. Moments later, the Elven army stood before the gates of Grey Hollow. Their leader, Prince Vaelor, Ellyrian's brother, rode forward. "Sister," he called out, his voice sharp. "Come back, or fall with the traitors." Ellyrian stepped onto the stone wall above the gate. "I've seen the truth, Vaelor. You stand on stolen power. We don't fear you anymore." He raised his hand. "Then you leave me no choice." He signaled the attack. The valley shook as elves charged forward, rows of arrows flying high. But nothing reached the humans. The first wave of Elven soldiers ran straight into pits disguised as ground. Traps snapped, capturing legs. Smoke bombs exploded, blinding them. Then the machines activated. Springs released, walls shifted, and tunnels collapsed behind the enemy lines, trapping many of the elves. Kale and his team used their knowledge, not strength, to control the battlefield. The elves panicked. They were trained for magic battles, not clever tricks, not human thinking. Inside the command cave, the Emberstone began to glow brighter. Kale turned to Ellyrian. "It's ready." "You'll have to go alone," she said. "I'll face my brother." He nodded. "Good luck." "You too," she whispered. Kale ran through hidden tunnels, deep beneath the battlefield, toward the Elven Emperor's palace. He carried the last part of the Emberstone. Once activated, it would break the ancient magical chain that fed Elven immortality. But it came with a price. The Emberstone required a sacrifice. Kale knew that. Still, he pressed forward. Above, the storm raged, both magic and steel clashing. Human traps, elven spells, shouts of fear and courage filled the air. But hope burned strongest in one place: Kale's heart. He reached the chamber beneath the Emperor's hall. He placed the Emberstone in its cradle, and everything began to shake. The walls of the chamber glowed with golden light as the Emberstone awakened fully. It floated above the pedestal, humming with deep energy. Kale stood before it, breathing heavily. Dust rained from the ceiling. The ground trembled. Time was running out. He knew what the Emberstone wanted. To break the Elven immortality spell, someone had to give their life energy freely. That energy would reverse the ancient bond, the one that tied Elven power to human blood. Kale closed his eyes. "If this is the cost, I accept it." Above, in the heart of the battlefield, the sky turned red and gold. Soldiers from both sides looked up, weapons frozen midair. A wave of light burst from the mountains, rushing like wind over stone. Ellyrian, locked in sword battle with her brother Vaelor, dropped her blade and turned. "No," she whispered. "Kale." The light touched every elf. Their armor dimmed. The magic around their bodies faded. For the first time in hundreds of years, they felt mortal. A silence spread across the battlefield. No one moved. Then slowly, elven soldiers fell to their knees, not in pain, but in shock. They were still alive, still breathing. But they felt human. Illyrian ran through the valley, her heart pounding harder than ever before. She followed the Emberstone's fading glow through the secret tunnels, down into the ruined chamber. And there, lying at the foot of the pedestal, was Kale. His chest rose and fell, but only barely. She dropped to her knees beside him, her hands trembling as she touched his face. "You did it," she said softly, tears sliding down her cheeks. "You gave them freedom." Kale opened his eyes slowly. "Did it work?" She nodded. "Yes, the spell is broken." He gave a weak smile. "Good, then. It was worth it." "No," she said firmly. "You are worth saving." Illyrian reached for the last ember of the stone and pressed it against his chest. She whispered an old elven healing spell, but with human words woven into it. A spell of life, not magic. The emberstone flashed once, then went still. Kale gasped, and color returned to his face. "You came back," he whispered. "I never left," she said, pulling him into her arms. Weeks passed. The war was over. The elves laid down their weapons. Their emperor stepped down. A new council was formed, with both elves and humans at the table. Illyrian and Kale stood together as symbols of peace. She, the princess who gave up power. He, the blacksmith who changed history. Grey Hollow was rebuilt, not just as a human city, but as a city for all. And in the center of it stood a statue. Two hands reaching for each other, one elven, one human. Illyrian often walked the streets without guards now. Children ran past her, laughing. Some had pointed ears, some didn't. No one cared. Kale worked again at a forge, not as a slave, but as a master craftsman. People came from all lands to learn from him. But in the quiet moments when the fire was low and the stars were out, he would look at Illyrian and smile. Because he knew the truth. One touch, one choice had changed everything. Forever.